Hello again. I am back with a Will's Weekly Football Roundup. Yes, it is back. I haven't done this properly since I've done one in January. That was about it. Missed it out for several weeks. Obviously, been very poor with uploads. Now, what I needed a good topic to talk about. What am I going to talk about? But we had the January transfer window. So, what I'm going to go do is I'm going to have a quick look through some of the Premier League signings through each and every single team. I'm going to sort of try and evaluate each team. Good window, bad window. Did they arguably win said window? I don't know. Cool. So let's just get into it. I normally go sort of top to bottom alphabetically, but what I might do just for a bit of fun is I'm going to flip it and go upwards. I'm going to start with Wolves and finish with Arsenal. So, Wolves, obviously a team fighting around sort of the relegation zone. They didn't have sort of too many outs. Obviously, a lot of these teams, there's actually been loads of ins and outs. Sort of players sort of coming in and out of loan sort of spells, particularly youngsters. So I'm not going to list every single one of those. So what I'm going to do is try and focus on the players within those teams that have been signed or sold that will have an actual effect on that first team and their squad and the team's aspirations in itself. Brilliant. Cool. As I was saying, Wolves. Wolves are a team that are in the relegation zone that have no issue scoring goals thanks to Matheus Cunha, as well as sort of having issues defensively, keeping things up. Obviously, they've had the shift into bringing in Pereira. I don't know if Wolves have really stylistically changed too much. They're still very, very reliant on Cunha, which, speaking of which, is actually one of Wolves' big things, is that they've tied Cunha down to a particular deal. I'm assuming that's with the idea of a potential release clause, or if a Champions League club comes in for him or someone like that. But to Wolves, he's more value to them now than whatever money that they could get, because Premier League survival financially is so much more important. So keeping Cunha, that's a major thing. Is it Agbadou, sort of the defender from Liga? And I believe I mentioned him in a previous video. I believe it was around 18 million. They've sort of signed a few more sort of youngsters. Well, within it, so Giga Munetsi. These Wolves, I think, need to do. They've had a sort of solid one. I don't think they've really moved the needle enough. I think they've added an additional player who I think is still a gamble, because you don't know how they're going to necessarily adapt to the Premier League. Keeping Cunha, I can't say good or bad. I can sort of say meh. Like, it's okay. You've not made things better. You've not made things worse, in fairness. It's just sort of, it's pretty mid. West Ham. West Ham are a bit of a fun one, because obviously they managerial change with Graham Potter. There's going to be a shift in system to them. So, I mean, there's a couple of sort of loan players that have gone in and out again. Cornet sort of got recalled from Southampton. I admit I forgot he was there still. Loaned back out again. James Ward-Prowse got recalled. I don't know whether this is a case of potentially planning on playing him a lot more, but obviously he wasn't getting game time at Nottingham Forest, and they were doing so well, and he wasn't part of the plans, which is fair enough. The fun one for West Ham is they signed Evan Ferguson. Ever since he's been linked to a sort of a move away, saying he can go, I thought a lot of teams were in for him, and I think this is a really smart signing from West Ham. The thing is with West Ham is they always keep looking for that Antonio replacement, never really quite getting it. They always end up reverting back to him in the second half of the season. Obviously, they can't do that now, obviously, with sort of mitigating circumstances. Obviously, he is on the mend, he is on the recovery, so I have to wait and see sort of what he's got left in the way of the playing career, but sort of fingers crossed about that one. But there's clearly a spot available for him. I mean, West Ham have played Bowen through the middle, but you also like playing him on the right as well, and you just need to have a bit more depth and a bit more quality. And obviously, he's someone that's worked with Potter as well, so it's a win-win from that perspective. So you'd like to think there's actually a good signing from West Ham, and I do think that aspiration wise, from West Ham's point of view, is I don't think I think with these signings or the managerial appointment, they're safe. They're not getting relegated. Let's be clear. They're out of that bracket. I don't also think that they're going to sort of break into any European competition. I think it's a case of maybe sort of having strong cup run. I believe for West Ham still in the. He's still in the cup. They might still be in the cup. They might not be in the cup. Sort of looking elsewhere for potential glory, because I don't think that they're going to move the needle and sort of push too high up in the league. I think they could move up sort of top, the best of the rest, is it? Sort of top of the bottom half of the table. I think they'd struggle to get into European places, and I think that's a very fierce area of the table right now, and I think they might struggle. But I think them getting clear of that relegation zone, considering the start of the season that they've had, I think giving Potter time, not sort of splashing the cash too much. I mean, these are only loan signings, and I think you'll find going through this window that a lot of teams are very, very afraid of FFP and the potential ramifications there. So you're not seeing as many big signings, and you're seeing a lot more loan signings. Players want to have minutes. Clubs don't want to overreach and overspend. They need to balance their books because they are aware of the potential repercussions that are going to take place. Now, there's one or two teams in particular that I still think that these rules don't apply to them, but we can get into those in a little bit. I think it's been a good. I think getting that striker in, I think that's the major concern. I think it's trickier to bring in centre backs and midfielders with West Ham because you're going to adapt to a new style of playing. So Potter's still got to work out what works, what doesn't. What wouldn't have worked is not having a striker. Simple as. They brought one in. One with Premier League experience, wants to prove himself, and has the potential to buy permanently because Brighton are very, very stacked as a squad. So good window from West Ham. That tips them up as far as I'm concerned. They are pretty good on that respect. Next we have Spurs. Spurs are a bit of a funny one. I sort of feel sorry for Ange at this point because I think now it's so done. I feel like the dressing room's not there. I think the style of play doesn't work, and I think his days are numbered. I don't see many other managers losing their job this season. I think he's won. But I think they might hold off until the end of the window to try and get a new manager, implement a different style of play potentially, as long as they're safe from relegation. If that actually ends up happening. So they're a team that have suffered quite a lot with injuries, particularly defensively. So they've brought in Danso from Ligue 1. They've brought in Matthias Tell because I believe they've been struggling with forward options as well, on loan as well. And they brought in the Czech goalkeeper Kinski, who's gone straight in. He's going to offer competition to Vicario. Still very unsure what this team sort of looks like when they've sort of recovered from any potential injuries going forward. I'm not really sure. Just not very sure of them. They didn't really have any major outs because there's just so many injuries. But they couldn't really sign too many people permanently for their coming back. But I think, is Ange's style of play potentially causing injuries? I mean, background staff style of play. I mean, these sorts of injuries, these sort of things. I mean, Van der Ven unfortunately does look like a player on his day that's really good, but he's very, very injury prone. I think you've got Romero, who can be a little bit like, well, not really, really quick, but obviously solid, which does get the suspension, does get the injuries. I know Spurs went in big for Marc Guéhi very late on, 70 million. I think that was he would have been a good signing, but it seemed a lot of lack of ideas, lack of creativity there, and just sort of reaching. And Crystal Palace, having already lost a centre-back before the window, were not going to lose another one, particularly in a team that plays a back three system. For Spurs, it's a bit mid. I don't think this improves them. I think this just until the managerial changes take place, which unfortunately I think will happen, I just don't see this as being much of an exciting window, much of a good window. There's a slight worry that sort of Kinski and Vicario, because of the amount of money spent on the goalkeeper, whether he's expecting to be starting regularly or not, or he's going to be competing fiercely for number one. I mean, that could be a potential issue. Maybe, but I mean, having two good people in that sort of same position shouldn't be considered a bad thing. We'll see on that front. Southampton had a lot of outs. Southampton are also in a very awkward position when it comes to the actual transfer window because they're so cut adrift. No one wants to be playing for a team that they feel is already down. They want to be playing for a team that's got goals, got aspirations, and hasn't sort of got a bit more for it, and sort of doesn't want to move to a Premier League team that they feel is just going to be in the Championship next season anyway. So I mean, they've sent out sort of several of their old sort of players on loan, like Brereton Diaz going out on loan to Sheffield United. Yes, he's back there again. Armstrong, who's clearly proven that he's not Premier League quality, going back out on loan to the Championship. Bazunu off on loan, Cornet being recalled. They've sort of signed a Brazilian youngster, Wellington. I don't necessarily think that's sort of moving too much of the needle, but like I sort of have a bit more sympathy for Southampton because it's a hard job to sort of sell for them, unfortunately. I think for Southampton, it's potentially looking at maybe some Championship players like aren't too afraid to be playing. As long as you can sell the idea of playing in the Championship next season to whoever they bring in, that's fine. But yeah, I mean, it's just it could be better, but I don't know. Do Southampton fans sort of have a realistic and sort of optimistic chance of survival? Obviously, they did beat Ipswich recently, but even then, they're still cut adrift from the Ipswich and Leicester points-wise, and then Ipswich and Leicester still need to sort of get out of the relegation zone themselves. Next up, we've got Nottingham Forest. Very difficult to criticise Nottingham Forest as they have been very, very good this season. Obviously, you don't want to upset the apple cart. Everything is still going well. They brought in Wayne Hennessy, an experienced backup goalkeeper. Good, fine, solid enough. Ward-Prowse recalled. Ahmed-Deli, the Irish centre-back's gone out on loan, needs Premier League experience. Can't really get into the squad. Fair enough. I'm happy with that. You don't upset the apple cart in this situation. I think just ride the wave as far as I'm concerned. So Forest, I think that's a perfectly fine window. Newcastle very much sort of stuck with FFP, but I believe they're sort of building up for a summer window potentially. Almiron obviously moving on a permanent. Lloyd Kelly with a loan with becoming an option or obligation to buy 15-20 million to Juventus. Most random transfer of the window. I think everyone can agree on that one. But it's a case of balancing FFP. Newcastle always feel sort of a bit tied up with that. They need to get a right winger, but they obviously feel that what they've got is fine, and I think they're very stuck by their financial restraints. So that's fair enough. It's okay. It's not moving the needle forward. It's not dramatically going to increase their chances of top four, but they must believe that they've got a good chance if they can keep everyone fit. But we'll see on that one. Man United, obviously very, very poor season from their point of view. Still adapting to the Amorim system, I believe, with signings of Dorgu, who I think offers a lot more flexibility and helps with that left wing back role. He offers athleticism in that squad and that team, which I don't necessarily think Man United have a lot of. They signed Heaven from Arsenal, sort of the striker, youngster. Not really expecting him to play too much, to be perfectly honest. I don't think they spent too much on this player, but I think they need several signings, and I just don't want United fans to sort of think he's going to be the player to fix all Man United's issues. They've got a lot of issues. They just need to get behind the player, get behind the team, and sort of hope from that. I'm a little bit disappointed on their outs. They had Marcus Rashford's gone out on loan and Antony's gone out on loan. Now, it's sort of kicking the can down the road a little bit from a Man United perspective because they just need to sell them, and then do people honestly believe when these players come back, these two players come back from loan, I think it's Malacia as well as on loan, but he's a slightly different situation, that they're going to get back into the team? I don't think Amorim's touching Antony. I don't think he's going near Rashford again either. I think Rashford's potentially burnt his bridges already. Antony's just not got the quality there. Malacia, I think, might have potential to come back in because he just needs fitness and game time. He's been very, very unlucky with injury. But I think you wanted to try and force through sort of the sales, may be difficult to sell because of how they have done recently, how the lack of game time. So, I mean, it's just, I know I want more from United, but that might also be a financial sort of an FFP situation, much like Newcastle as well. But in order for that to happen, it also depends on your ability to sell players. I think Man United have a lot of deadwood, and I think they needed to sell more players. They needed to clear the wages, clear the books, and actually generate some funds to have players that are going to play in this system and make a difference. I think Eriksen, I think Casemiro are dead wood. It's not just about who you're bringing in and getting out, it's how you're sort of keeping as well. And I think they could have done a lot of work to that squad by trying to shift some of those players out, by ringing up Saudi teams and saying, oi, how much do you want? That's sort of our deal for Casemiro. That's money there. Just go for it, in my opinion. Man City are a really weird one because obviously they're sort of very much below their actual expectations of a team. They're expecting to be competing for the title, to competing for absolutely everything. They're not. Been naff. They had something like that horrible losing streak. They look like they might be getting back to what they sort of getting back into top four, I think, is their main aspiration of potentially winning a cup. Currently losing to Leyton Orient. Things might have changed right now. Obviously, I'm trying to film, watch, do everything. But it looks like they're trying to do a rebuild in January, which is really, really stupid and really, really risky. And it's sort of, a lot of these players, there doesn't ever seem to be a lot of joined up thinking, at least stylistically from that point of view, as to sort of the players that they're going to bring in. They've loaned out Walker. That's fair enough. I mean, I still think he could do a job. I still think he's influential in the dressing room. Maybe obviously trying to shift players along to try and help improve things. Out of their big signings recently, I think Marmoush is the most interesting one because he's the most informed one. Coming from Eintracht Frankfurt, loads of goals, loads of assists, but plays as the main striker. They've been playing him behind Haaland. I don't know whether you're getting that same influence on the team that you had for Frankfurt that you had from City. As well as that, City, I'd be very, very wary of signing any players from Eintracht Frankfurt. They always manage to get the most out of their strikers within a set system. And every time a striker from Eintracht Frankfurt leaves, it's always a downhill trajectory. Look at Jovic, look at Haller, look at Kolo Muani. These just doesn't go well, unfortunately. And I feel like that might be the case as well. You sort of spent 60, 70 odd million on him. Sort of Rice, sort of the 2030. Same for Kushyanov and Nico Gonzalez. I mean, you're fresh signing sort of these centre-backs. I don't think City's issues have been defensively. They've obviously been in the midfield, and it was very, very late in the day that they signed Gonzalez for 50 million. He's not got the ability of Rodri, and it felt like it was a very rushed deal. It's just like, we need to get someone to plug the hole now. And you just don't think it's just not going to... I mean, that's what? I mean, 30, 60, 150... You talk about £200 million worth of money-ish sort of spent in January. What team does that? That reeks of desperation. They're genuinely either worried that they're not going to hit their target, or something will have happened in those FFP meetings. They know something that we don't potentially. That either they're potentially prepping for a big ban or knowing they're going to get away with it. I don't know. They probably know they're going to get away with it because there's no way you spend 200 million in January thinking that that's balancing the book. Something there ain't right. Simple as. So from that, we're going to have a look at Leicester. Leicester are a bit of a calmer team, and I'm a little bit disappointed from their point of view. They didn't really back Van Nistelrooy. I mean, they backed Cooper, but I feel like a new manager, they need to back him a little bit more. They brought in Koulibaly, not that one. From Parma, not that one. For a couple of million defensive reinforcement, that's fair enough. They've let go of Tom Cannon, who's obviously smashing in the Championship, to sell him in the Championship now. They've brought him back from loan from Stoke to sell him to Sheffield United. Hamza Chowdhury, Championship player, sent him out on loan. There's not enough quality brought in for Leicester, and Leicester are within touching distance of getting out of the relegation zone. They need to give it a go. They really do. They're not backing the manager, so I don't know what they promised him to bring him in the first place. That's a bit disappointing from my point of view, as Leicester are a team that usually do back their managers. So that's very poor from them. I think, in my head, it's giving up a little bit, in my opinion. Now, a team, thankfully, that haven't given up are Ipswich, as they're going to give this a go. They obviously still have a lot of League One players. They're obviously still within a shout of getting out of the relegation zone points-wise. They're not cut adrift as of yet. They've brought in several exciting players that will potentially be happy in the Championship as well. They've brought in several loan players as well. They've sent out a few of their sort of former teammates sort of permanently on loan. Harry Clark's not necessarily getting minutes, so sent out on loan. Same for Al Hamidi back into the Championship. So they could easily come back with a bit more experience and sort of re-establish themselves within the squad. Fair enough. George Edmondson, a loan spell at Middlesbrough, made that permanent. Fair enough. Ipswich need to sort of think about, maybe look at balancing books, but obviously haven't spent a lot of money previous years, so that's probably why they're spending quite so much now, as it's still essentially been a League One sort of Championship-ish sort of squad. So they needed to invest, regardless of whether they were in the Championship now or the Premier League now. They needed to invest. And Cisse and Godfrey on loan, I think, are very good. These are experienced Premier League players. Godfrey in particular, I think, could be very useful in a leaky backline, which obviously needs to be fixed. Potentially looking at the idea of a back three, maybe. And Cisse is a very fun one. He was very hyped up at Brighton. He's sort of an additional sort of creative attacking player behind the striker. You've got Philogene permanently for 20 million. They're looking at in the summer window. Now got him permanently. It's another fun attacking-y player. It's the same with people like Jack Clark and Amari Hutchinson. They need to really stamp their foot in the Premier League. They don't want to. They need to have that little kick on in the Premier League. You can't have these sort of Tom Ince is a good example. A player that absolutely used to smash it in the Championship a few years ago, but can never ever really do it in the Premier League that much. And these players are they're all sort of ones that can play behind the striker, on the wing, those sort of creative sort of attacking players that like to just drive with the ball. These ones are players that need to really kick on, get the goals, get the numbers, sort of prove that they belong in the Premier League. Now, they are youngsters, obviously, so time is on their side in that respect, but they really need to sort of kick on and grab it. And the big signing from Ipswich point of view, it's only a couple of mil. Alex Farmer from West Brom, a quality Championship goalkeeper. We'll see how well he does in the Premier League to replace Aro Muric, as he has definitely cost Ipswich points this season. So I'm very bullish on Ipswich's window. I think they've made some smart signings and hopefully kick on from that. Fulham, not too much to say. They've had several youngsters going out on loan. The weird one, they brought in Willian back on a free. He just seems to fit at Fulham. Like he went out to, I believe it was Olympiacos between his Fulham spells. Not necessarily cracked it there, but it just seems a good fit. Maybe just adding a bit of depth, not wanting to upset the apple cart too much. Fulham obviously having a good season. Wait to see how they get on. I think they're looking at potentially getting something more in the midfield, sort of deep lying, sort of number 8s maybe, but we'll see in that respect. Everton's a bit of a quiet one as well. I think the main signing was getting Moisey over the line. I think that's going to make the difference, and just because of that, I think they're safe. Several youngsters out on loan. They brought in Alcaraz, the former Southampton striker, on loan, adding a bit of depth. Not really thinking it's going to really improve the quality of the thing, but the main signing from Everton point of view was getting Moisey back. So I think Everton have done a great job in that respect, and they will be safe and they will be happy. Crystal Palace are a very fun one. They've lost Chalobah, both gone back to Chelsea. Holding's gone out on loan. Yes, people may have forgot Rob Holding was still at Crystal Palace. He was. And then they've brought in Chilwell on loan. So potentially looking at the left wing back slot, as Palace would normally play a back three. Maybe looking at bringing Mitchell into the back three, centre back wise, because he's more defensively sound. Or maybe just extra cover. I think this is a smart move from a Chilwell perspective, who's not getting minutes. Going out to Palace, potentially looking at a more permanent move, is a really smart move from his career. And you're looking at a great quality player from Crystal Palace. Elevates the squad, in my opinion. As well as Romain Esse from Millwall. He's another fun, attacking winger who can just drive at people, go at people. He's sort of, I think, to quote James Allcott, he's got the wiggle and he's got the wiggle. So he's the one that's got the pace, and then he's got the skills and tricks to get around people as well. I think this is a very, very fun signing. So I think this is really bullish from Palace. This could potentially be another Elise as a sort of style player, which Palace thrive on and absolutely love. And it's just really, really fun. Makes them a fun team to watch. So I think that's pretty good. I think they're pretty solid now. I think they obviously had a bit of a slow start to the season. I don't think they've got any European aspirations. Sort of much like West Ham, it's a case of establish again, sort of keep that manager in charge, keep the style of play, improve the squad, sort of do a few more tweaks in house to make sure they know exactly what they want and need, and then go at it big in summer. But I think it's a very fun, very good window from Crystal Palace. Chelsea a bit boring. Well, in some respects, they've had a calm window. For Chelsea, they don't really do calm very often, so it's very nice that respect that they are doing something calm. So they brought back Chalobah from loan. He literally goes straight into that back line and gets man of the match first game. There's a shock. He's a good player. Everyone knew that, so that's not much of a surprise there. Sent out lots of players on loan, as I've mentioned. Chilwell, Chukwuemeka to Dortmund. That could be a fun one. Disasi off to Villa. João Felix off to AC Milan. It's just clear the dressing room out a little bit. They've not got as many games potentially moving forward, so they can't give as much minutes to these players. Sensible, it's smart, it's calm. Chelsea, I think it's a solid window. I think it's good to sometimes just have a calm window, particularly from a Chelsea team that naturally spend a lot of money and have a lot of rotation in the way of players going in and out. It's good to maybe just having the manager know what he wants and what they want going forward. So fairly happy with that one. Brighton sort of sent out, as I mentioned previously, Ferguson and Cisse on loan. I think that's smart because they're youngsters and a potential upside to come back into the team. Obviously, a lot of quality in the sort of those areas, but we'll see. Diego Gomez from Inter Miami, sort of another attacking winger. So we'll see whether he gets any minutes in that respect. I'm still unsure of. Stefanos Zimas, the Greek striker, I think, has been sent back out on loan. It's just increasing depth in this quality of the squad. I think Brighton have sort of slipped a little bit in recent weeks, so they really need to bounce back and kick on, especially after that absolute hiding by Nottingham Forest. But it's just okay. It's like you just trust the scouting network at Brighton now. You don't question it because they'll just find some obscure Colombian midfielder out of nowhere and send them on for 60, 70 mil later on because they're just that system, the structure is just in place at Brighton is just so good. Brentford didn't really do too much, to be honest. They've sent out several players on loan. Roslev probably being the biggest name. Brought in Coyote on loan. Like nothing too exciting from Brentford. I think I'd be trying to, if I was Brentford, I'd try and back Thomas Frank because he's such a good manager and he's had to work with some dross sometimes. He really has, and I think it's a matter of time before he just sort of says, you know what, I'm better than this. I can go somewhere better. I can do a good job and be backed. He does so well with such a limited squad in some respects. I mean, they've done very well keeping Oliver and Buemo and Vissa. It's not really very imaginative. It's a bit boring, really. It's just sort of, that bit more of excitement. Obviously, they've had sort of players that have kicked on, like Damsgaard this season, who's almost acted like a new signing in itself because he's taken a while to adapt and sort of get fully fit. Obviously, a big player within Brentford's system now, but it's not a very exciting one, to be honest with you, from a window perspective. Bournemouth obviously absolutely smashing it right now. They've not brought in too many players. They're bringing in youngsters like Julio Soler, sort of a backup left back from South America. Maybe looking at Kirkes potentially leaving. They haven't lost any of their major sort of starting 11 sort of key players. They've loaned out people like Travers, Max Aarons, Philip Billing. Going off to, I believe, Napoli was a bit of a strange one in my opinion. But it's another one like with Forest, is you don't want to upset the apple cart right now. What you've got works, and it's just carefully adding a little bit of depth within the squad. People aren't going to be demanding minutes that will potentially look to grow into it and get minutes sort of eventually at some point. And you're sort of waiting to see when the dust settles in the summer how much that squad might get picked apart because Kirkes, for example, Semenyo, these are players that they could lose, but they've kept hold of them, and that's the big thing. So it's a solid window for Bournemouth from that respect. Then we've got Aston Villa. Aston Villa have had a very busy window. I think they've also been smart. In fact, I think they've balanced the books to some extent because they've sort of, in the way of out, they're sort of getting rid of Diego Carlos from sort of some good fee. Well, maybe it's a loan to option obligation. I might double check that one. Jane Philogene sort of flipped him over for more money. Duran, obviously a lot of money from Saudi. strike while the iron's hot whilst he's at that high value. I think that's a really, really smart bit of business from Aston Villa. They needed to... They don't have to worry about FFP now. They're going to go into that summer window and they're going to be comfortable being able to spend. I've recalled Louis Barry, send him out on loan to a high level. They want to see if he can do it. He could potentially be that backup to Watkins. We'll see in that respect. Buendia out on loan to Bayer Leverkusen. A bit random, but he got man of the match first game in the Leverkusen shirt. So he's just someone that struggled to break into that squad sort of since his injuries. And there's definitely quality there. But he needs the game time. He needs the minutes now, kicking on from that. And then sort of the ends, they've had Daniel Mal, 20 million, Champions League experience, apparently not included in the Champions League squad. Don't know whether he might just be because he's cup tied, maybe, because he's obviously played for Dortmund. But yeah, it's sort of Villa can use other players then and then bring in Marlon for the league games, so it makes sense. Young player, got experience at sort of a high level, very fun, very exciting, and offers competition on that right hand side. You've got into Sassi on loan. I think they've had injuries to the back line, getting rid of Carlos and bringing someone else in who's clearly a sort of good bog standard Premier League defender. Makes sense, smart move. The riskier moves are the loan signings of Marcus Rashford and Asensio. Asensio doesn't get many minutes at PSG, but has predominantly been playing as a centre forward. He used to be as a winger. The hype of him has just been... He was so high when he was at Real Madrid, and it's just calmed down. It's just plateaued, it's flattened off. There must be some quality there, but it's not to get excited about. Rashford's the one that's more interesting because it could just go one of two ways. As I think he could really, really bang, or he just sort of disappears into the ether. It depends what his attitude's like and his ability to work with Emery. That if he works hard for the team and the squad, the Villa fans will back him, and it might be a less hostile atmosphere at Villa than it is at Man United, which might help get the best football out of Marcus Rashford again. So we'll wait and see in that regards. But I'm hopeful that this will be a good move for him. I don't see it as a move from getting back into England squad. It's just a case of him getting back to playing regular Premier League minutes and doing what we all know he can do. With the option of 40 million, which I think is a fair price. Large wages is probably the one sticking point. I think Villa are only paying 75% of it. It's like 300k plus. Crazy wages, but no, it's fine. I think it sort of shows that Villa still have aspirations of trying to push on in the Champions League run that they've got and push on within the league to get as high up as they can in the European spaces. I don't think they'll get top four. But if they can keep regularly securing European football, have a good run of the Champions League, maybe have a good cup run, I think it's a good season for Aston Villa. So I'm happy. I think that they're showing that they've got aspirations going into the second half of the season, which I like. Arsenal is a bit boring. It's a bit dull, and it's a bit lazy as far as I'm concerned. They've sort of sent several youngsters out on loan and sort of transferred in, and it's just sort of like, all right, not too much improving the actual window. They went in late for Watkins. It's just a lazy bid just to almost make it look like they were doing something, that they were trying something. He's a quality Premier League striker, but so late in the window, literally just after Villa had sold their backup striker, they're not going to go without any striker. So they needed to, if they wanted him, they need to go in hard for him. They need to go in hard for him at the start of the window. It's late. It's lazy. It reeks of just sort of not showing enough. I mean, they've still got aspirations of winning the title, of going well in Europe. Show it. Back them a little bit. Maybe it's a case of you need to make the right signing for the right dressing room and the right ethos, but it's just a bit... Things are there for the taking for Arsenal, and if they don't take them, I feel like it's just going to be passing them by. But we'll see for now. I think I've covered everything there. Sorry if I waffled on about anything. I've tried to be as concise as possible. I will try and upload a video tomorrow. Thank you very much. I will see you all later.